Tell us how you got in progress.
Well,
The short version.
the short version.
Oh, I got long version.
Short version. I was a fan of wrestling from my earliest memories of television. Reggie Parks, who went on to be, the great belt maker for all the belts we have, had during that era, was wrestling as the Avenger or something in the Mid-Atlantic, and he was the first wrestler that I saw that had like kind of a physique, because back in the '60s there wasn't a whole lot of guys that had like great physiques. So I admired that, and I saw that, and then later on I saw a guy named Wahoo McDaniels and Johnny Valentine that I was pretty sure were actually killing each other. So it was inspiring to me, seeing this kind of competition on this little box I'm watching on television. I'm a only kid in in the middle of a little country bumpkin kind of town, and I went on to latch on to wrestling as my sport of choice in high school. Didn't start out great, but ended up having a successful collegiate career, and actually, just like Dan Gable was my hero, and I dreamed of going to the Olympics one day. And but fate being what it was, 1980s we had boycotted the Olympics, and I found myself working in security in nightclubs in Virginia Beach, and it got to be a bigger version of my high school self. I was about 215, 220 pounds, and started seeing, again, professional wrestlers coming into the clubs that I was working in. And I was seeing guys like Greg Valentine and Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, and these guys coming in. And I said, man, this looks like a thing. And they ran an article in the Virginia Pilot about wrestling, and I saw they quoted figures like Blackjack Mulligan making $150,000 a year in 1979, and to me, that kind of money in '79, you were a millionaire.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of daggone money. I mean, I'm working for basically $25 a night, risking life and limb, working, bouncing in clubs, and then you talk about these guys making this crazy money. And so I tried to figure out the path, the way, and actually Greg Valentine, me and him and I've talked about this to this day. He had said, hey, if you could come down to Charlotte and spend some time down here with us, he said I could, kind of help you and show you the ropes. And I had never lived anywhere but home in the Tidewater area. So the moving thing was kind of spooky to me. The whole thing was weird, but I couldn't figure out how to crack the egg. And this guy named Buzz Sawyer pops into my life, who Manny knows well, and he saw potential in me, not as a superstar, but as a guy that was so hungry he would do anything to try to get in the business. And not being in the inner circle and kayfabe being king and people protecting the business the way they did, I didn't have any way to find out really what it was going on. And Buzz had told me that it cost $10,000 to get a wrestling license.
Oh my God!
To get in the business, right? And I borrowed that money from my grandfather, who told me he believed in me because what he'd seen me do my whole life, fight from losing every match I had as a freshman in high school to being the state champion that I pinned everybody I wrestled in the state tournament my senior year. And he watched me transform myself after high school into a 220-pound young man, and he believed that he was a wrestling fan, and he believed that I could go out there and be competitive with those people. And he loans me $10,000, which back then was probably in the days of money like giving somebody $100,000. And Buzz is going to bring open the door to get me into business. And next thing I know, Buzz left. Buzz gone, right? Buzz is
With your money.
But what he didn't realize was, I wasn't the average cat that he had maybe come across, and many marks that he had taken advantage of over the years. And he did call me and say, hey, my little brother is going to work for Bill Watts in Mid-South. If you could go down and pick him up in Tampa and take him over there and hang out there for a little while. I'll call you when I can, get you started up here. I'm up in Portland. So I went and picked him up and went to went to Baton Rouge and slept on a couch for 2-3 months and living on crackers and tomato soup and anything I could find to live on because I wasn't working. And I met another guy named Jimmy Garvin who smartened me up real quick to the kind of guy I was dealing with. And he said, hey, if that was me and I'd put that kind of money out, I'd go find him. And so I did. I got in my car, I drove 3,000 miles and ended up on his doorstep and beating on his door, and he opened it up and I said, well, when are we ready to start? So I figured we were going to be ready to start. We were really going to have one hell of a fight and end it right then and there, or he was going to give me the business. And he chose to give me an opportunity. I went down to a ring. I'd never been in a ring before in my life. Princess Victoria, who was at this event, we all got in the ring and we worked out for 2 solid hours. She taught me how to grab a headlock, hit the ropes, take a backdrop, do everything he could think of in 2 hours. And the very next night, I wrestled him on TV live, I did the favor. I put him over in a babyface type match, and he had convinced Don Owens that I had been working for 6 months for Bill Watts. I love it. And I got booked every night, and so I worked 7 days a week. I'd never been trained. I had no background. I learned on the ropes. I poured Tonka John down there in the ring. Felt my greenness because we beat the holy crap out of each other trying to figure out how to work. In that era. And, shortly thereafter, I got an opportunity to go leave there, went to work for Joe Blanchard, and where I met Manny. And Manny took me under his wing as his rookie. And
Rest is history.
Man,
Wow.
I cannot
That's
tell
amazing,
you,
isn't
I can't tell you, there would never have been a Magnum without that guy.
it? Wow. Nadal, we know that you were a house